Yes, hello everyone, Falter Rash, Goody Cúilín Media. Welcome back to another show here. It's episode 5 already, would you believe, of this Cúilín Media journey. I'm joined once again by Liam White, Matthew Hurley, Aaron Prendergast, and me, Seamus Brady. We're going to run through a weekend preview episode. We're going to look ahead to some of the big club championship action that is going to take place this weekend. And we're also going to have a look back at some of the big GAA news which hit the world of Gaelic games since our last episode last Sunday. So lads, how are we keeping? Liam, I'm going to come to you first. How have you been?
Yeah, not too bad. Was at the ploughing 2 of the 3 days this week, and my calves are absolutely killing me from walking around all day trying to interview people. But it's been a good week. I've been managed to interview Davy Fitzgerald and Ronan Maher on Tuesday, which was nice. Getting to interview obviously legends of the GAA game. And met Jim Gavin today as well, who's up for president. Obviously, will be seen as a god in Dublin as well. So a lot of GAA folk at the ploughing this week. But not too bad. Looking forward to the weekend's action and looking forward to getting into the episode.
Absolutely. Aaron, big weekend in the Dublin Championship. Obviously, we'll get onto it, but we've got the 4 football quarterfinals all taking place this weekend. It's going to be something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be some cracking games. Like you're looking at Cúilín versus Clontarf, Ballybowden versus Castleknock, Kickham's versus Na Fianna as well. I think it's going to be very, very... Yeah. Like I feel like the other 3 you could kind of look towards. Yeah, I think Crokes will be too strong for Lucan. I think Cúilín will probably be too strong for Clontarf. And look, I know we won't get too much into it now. I know we'll come to it, but yeah, no, looking forward to the games. And there's a lot of good games on this weekend. Like there's a lot of games kind of heating up across some of the various different championships. So yeah, no, looking forward to discussing it with all you lads on the show.
Absolutely. We have a few questions flying in here, which is great to see, guys. Dublin is great, says Seamus. Are you doing commentary on Sunday for Na Fianna? I'm actually not. My mum and dad, it's their 30th wedding anniversary, so believe it or not, I actually had to not be available for commentary on that day. But we have the next question, and Matthew, it's just in time for me to throw this one to you. Lads, I actually got him to say thanks for having me on the other day. I don't know if you saw that, but we managed to make it happen. But Peter has a question for you. Matthew said, what was the controversy in Donegal with St. Eunan's? Apparently an appeal was on the table.
Yeah. So, as we all know, St. Eunan's did lose by a point to Thurman. It was a shock in the Donegal Football Championship. But it was a similar situation to the Glen and Kilbacug Crokes game and the Broad Rovers and Blarney game a few years ago, where an extra player went on the pitch for Thurman. And apparently he played a big part in getting Thurman's winning score. So there was controversy over that. There was a lot of people unhappy about the Donegal officials, but St. Eunan's actually put out a statement on their social media saying they're going to take no further action. They're out of the championship. Thurman won it fair and square. It was a shock result. I'd leave it at that, but they were disappointed with the officials on their performance on the day. But I suppose like we wanted the shock to happen, so we were kind of thinking, oh crap, like if this goes to a replay, Thurman are going to lose here. But in fairness to St. Eunan's, they were like the bigger club in this. They were saying that, look, we were outplayed in the day, we lost by a point, fair and square. We shouldn't let Thurman, suffer through this. So in fairness to St. Eunan's, it could have been a controversy very, very quickly, but St. Eunan's just brushed it down and said, look, we weren't good enough. We move on to next year.
Absolutely. So, Aaron, we have a question in directed at us. Is Na Fianna v Ballymun predictions? But boys, I'll throw it to you as well. Starting off as 2 people not from Dublin, Na Fianna, Ballymun, is it a case of looking at the big names that Ballymun have, or do you fancy Na Fianna to take it? Liam, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, look, I'd obviously know Na Fianna more for their hurling instincts than their football ones, but I know obviously they're a proud football club as well. They're a proud GAA club, really. What amazed me was actually the size of the club when we played them last year. I actually didn't realize how many clubs or how many numbers that they have in that club. They're a fantastic club, and they've been a great credit to Dublin GAA and really to the GAA over the last year or so. But look, it's a cracking looking fixture, Ballymun Kickham's and Na Fianna in the football championship. I don't know. I feel like maybe Ballymun are a very, very solid side. as we know, obviously they have some fantastic players all across their team. I mean, Dean Rock is the most obvious one. You know, probably a player that could still play for Dublin if we're being honest about it, and could probably still rock in a corner forward if he had to. But yeah, it's hard to know. Look, if you were to remind me now, who's been the better side throughout the season so far for you?
There's no question about it. Na Fianna blown hot and cold. They've been really, you know, they started off the championship terribly. They got annihilated by Ballybowden 4-23 to 3-9. They lost to Bowden in round 1. Then they hockeyed Vincent's the next day out. I think it was 5-18 to 19 points. And then when it was all on the line against Ballantyre St. John's in round 3, they got through by the skin of their teeth. I think they won by a point. But again, Ballybowden flattened Ballantyre when they played them in Parnell Park. So to be honest, Na Fianna look like they can swat teams aside who are not on their level. But I don't see them winning the championship this season right now. I think that they are definitely the favourites in the hurling. But in the football, I don't think they're quite there. Whereas Ballymun as well, like they topped the group, yes, but they did struggle to do it, and they haven't looked like the Ballymun of old. And to be honest, I think whoever wins this, I don't think gets to the final. I think if they come up against Cúilín or Crokes in their semi-final, I think if they play Ballybowden, I think they have a chance, because Bowden have a tendency to flatter to deceive. Yeah, they have a tendency to flatter to deceive over the last 2 or 3 years. But that being said, Ballymun won it in 2020 with a lot of the squad that are still there now. But it's going to be really, really interesting to see, because there's a lot of new faces in that Ballymun team, but the key players are still the ones that have always been the key players. Dean Rock, James McCarthy, Paddy Small, John Small. They've always been the key players, and they are still the key players.
Isn't Comerford in goals as well for them?
Comerford is in goal for them, yeah. They have some, there's no question about it. They have a seriously talented team. It's just a question of, if they couldn't do it over the last 3 or 4 years, why all of a sudden can they do it now? And I don't think that they've added enough in terms of the new players coming through that can tell me that they can beat Cúilín or beat Crokes. Or Bowden, to be honest, right now. Bowden's key players, Aaron, I'm sure you back this up, Bowden's key players this season, it's Dara Sweeney, it's Ryan O'Dwyer, it's new lads. It's not like you'd be looking from the outside thinking, oh, surely Colin Basquel is running the show. I mean, yeah, he's doing well, but Ryan Basquel isn't even starting these days. He's coming in off the bench. It's Ryan O'Dwyer, it's Dara Sweeney that are tearing it up in the forward line. Bowden constantly have new players coming in. And then on top of that, they have Keane Darcy from Galway around the middle, and he is ripping it up. He is dominating midfield in every game that he plays. So it's going to be a serious clash. I will get to the predictions later, lads. We'll get to the predictions later, because we've a lot to get through. But yeah, a lot to get through. Liam, there is a directed question to you, so I'll give this and then we'll move on to the rest of the news. He says, Liam, what was the story with Durrow giving a walk over to Road in the Offaly Football Championship and many of the Durrow lads hurling with Ballynamere?
Yeah, so Ballynamere and Durrow, they're separate clubs, but they're the same club, if you get what I mean. So like the likes of your Kieran Burks, your Dan Burks, your Brian Dignans, Ross and Dan Ravenhill, all them who would all hurl with Offaly, they play their football with Durrow. And so Durrow, look, without trying to be controversial, Durrow wouldn't be seen as one of the strong teams in football. They'd be seen as like a team that maybe kind of like, well, I wouldn't say like Kickham's now, that'd be a bit disrespectful to Kick. Actually, that's very disrespectful to Ballymun Kickham's. But the way you just described it is like hot and cold. Like Durrow could be a team that they could maybe on their day pull off maybe a shock result, but they don't have the quality or enough quality to pull off kind of wins like that. Whereas Ballynamere were at the start of the season seen as one of the favourites for the Offaly Senior Hurling Championship. And so going into the game against Road, they were out. They had nothing really to play for. But their hurlers are playing us, Kilcormac on Saturday. And so they decided, a lot of the hurlers, that they didn't want to play the football last weekend in a dead rubber in case they were to get injured, because like at the end of the day, their match against us is far, far more important than their football match against Road was. So they made the decision. They only had 13 players in total to line out. And I think at the start, I wasn't the biggest fan of this. I was thinking you can't just be, throwing a game, especially at the highest, level in your own respective club championship. You can't just be throwing a game and people saying it puts the championship in jeopardy or the credibility of it. But the more you think about it, if they had played that game, they would have had to probably pull a load of junior players to go play that game, in which they would have probably gotten hockeyed anyway. And then you're thinking, right, if you then throw those players into senior, they now are registered as senior players even for next season, and they probably can't go back, some of them, and play junior, which is just going to cause a lot of reefs in the club and a lot of reefs within the parish and everything like that. And then on top of that, had any of their hurlers got injured, like say if Dan Burke got injured in the match against Road, I can tell you there would have been absolute uproar in the club, over not being able to play against us. So I think in a way it probably was a wise decision to maybe not play the game. It doesn't do Road any favours in the football going forward. And look, a lot of people are saying they have to back it up now this weekend and beat us to justify it. I think they just need to beat us anyway, regardless of what happened last weekend, just to justify anything. I don't think last weekend's actions have anything to do with even this weekend's game. In a way, I think it's a completely separate issue. But yeah, no, look, it was I think at the start I wasn't the biggest fan. I'm probably still not the biggest fan of just turning the game. But at the same time, when you do look deeper down, I think you could probably understand why they did it and why they've said instead we'll just take the fine.
Yeah, no, I think it does kind of make sense when you explain it like that. But nobody likes to see walkovers. They are an unfortunate thing that can happen in the game still. We're going to move through the news of the week since we last spoke on Sunday. Matthew, I am going to give you this story. Henry Shefflin becomes the Kilkenny under-20 hurling manager. Are we seeing potentially some foreshadowing here? Is this potentially Kilkenny's future senior hurling manager, or are we running too far ahead with this?
Probably running too far ahead. It's an under-20 appointment from a legendary figure in Kilkenny hurling. I think, look, it's a good appointment in terms of trying to rebuild Henry's career, because I remember when Henry was at Galway, it was especially the last year of his tenure with the Galway senior hurlers, it was putting it mildly a disaster. Like as the years went on, I discussed this with all of you guys. I discussed it with Dan Casey as well on my pod. As the years went on with Galway, it just got worse and worse with Henry Shefflin. That kind of questioned him as a high-level manager. He's now with Ballyhale Shamrocks, who beat Erin's Own recently, obviously, as we mentioned in this pod, 132 to 28 or whatever that score was. So he is rebuilding his career, thankfully from his point of view. And I think the under-20 job in Kilkenny, look, it's a good move forward. I don't think he was able to take the senior job in Kilkenny. I know a lot of people would have wanted Derek Ling out after, Kilkenny didn't do well this year, got to the All-Ireland semi-final, didn't do much afterwards. But considering how Henry's last senior inter-county job went, I think it would have been an absolute disaster to appoint him straight away. So I think this is a good building block for him. It's a good kind of a recuperation process. He needs to go into the under-20s now. If he does well there, look, he's going to be the Kilkenny senior hurling manager in the next few years. If he doesn't do well, a lot of questions will be asked of him as a manager in general. Yes, he's done well with Ballyhale Shamrocks, but from what I was hearing from certain people in Kilkenny, I've been talking to some people saying that, look, Ballyhale Shamrocks, they kind of manage themselves, like TJ Reid and Cody. Like, they're kind of players that would fend for themselves. They don't need a manager to tell them what to do on the pitch. So that has put questions more so on Henry Shefflin and how he does with this younger talent of Kilkenny players. Kilkenny did reach the under-20 All-Ireland final last year, where they lost to Tipperary, and they do have some very good young players coming through. So there's probably no excuse for Henry to not do well with this team. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Henry to do well with Kilkenny and prove that he is a proper inter-county manager, especially how his last job went.
Yeah. We have a few comments in about it. Peter says probably more likely Eddie Brennan will take over from Ling. Then what's the thought on Bulfin joining Antrim hurlers? Then Dudley's Gate says, I do not think Henry Shefflin is a good manager. The star players never are. And then Peter says, Richie O'Neill was in Galway with Henry. He's in with him for the 20s. And also agree with Matthew, Shamrocks effectively managed themselves. Liam, fellow Leinster man, Henry Shefflin coming in as Kilkenny under-20 manager. Do you see that as a future appointment, or do you agree with Matthew that it's a good way to kind of kick the tires, see would he be able for the job?
I think he would be able for the job. Like, I still think he did a good job enough in Galway, especially in his first 2 years. I don't think he actually did that bad. Obviously, his last year was a complete disaster, especially by the standards of Galway and the standards that they would have set in the years previous. And look, to me, he still is a good, proven manager. I know you say, look, obviously you have players like TJ Reid, you have your own Cody's, your Richie Reid, all these players who can obviously fed for themselves, but they still do need to be coached at the end of the day. You still need to coach these players. Like, it's not just about coaching players. It's, getting them doing the right things off the pitch. It's getting them having the right mentality, willing to die with their boots on for you. Even players who are in their 30s, who have experience over years and years and years of playing hard-hitting games or close enough games or tight games, they still need to be managed even in their later careers, especially as you get later on in your career as well, because you need to manage how lads train, what they're taking on, how many minutes can they actually physically train, especially if you're someone like TJ Reid, who's 36, 37, 38 now, like lads like that. So I still think he's a very good manager. He won the All-Ireland with Ballyhale at the end of the day. He's still an All-Ireland winning club manager, which is a very, very impressive feat to have. Now, look, do I think he'll do it this year with Ballyhale? Personally, no. I just think O'Loughlin Gales are extremely, extremely strong in Kilkenny. And I think, especially after getting knocked out by Thomastown last year, I think if he could get over Thomastown in a quarter final, first of all, it'd be a huge step for him as a manager to get over the line in a game like that, especially after the way they went out last year. But yeah, look, I do agree with Matthew, though. I think it's a good move for him to go in as under-20 Kilkenny manager. I think he was going to become a Kilkenny manager of some kind at some stage. It was just a matter of when rather than if. With the whole thing about would he have been suited to go in after Derek Ling, I do agree with Matthew, probably not right now. I still think Ling can do a good job with Kilkenny. I still think he is someone who I think can actually lead Kilkenny to an All-Ireland title. Look, they've lost to Clare in 2024. They shouldn't have lost that. Tipperary this year, I mean, they scored 30 points. It was just the goals that killed them. Obviously, and look, there's no point making an excuse about the scoreboard in Croke Park like that. They still lost the game. They still went for goal anyway. So, but still, they only lost to the All-Ireland winners by 2 points. And they were in the All-Ireland final in 23. So they're really not that far off. I don't think Ling has done as bad a job as people make it out to be. It's always going to be difficult taking over from Brian Cody and trying to live up to the legacy that he has. But yeah, I think it's a good learning curve for Henry. Anyways, if he could get a successful run as Ballyhale manager, and like you said there, they also still lost to that under-20 team last year. Lost to a very, very good Tipperary under-20 team. That they were the favourites going into the start of the year, or at least for me, they were probably the favourites going into the start of the year, especially going into Munster as well, if they felt like the team to beat. So yeah, I don't think there was any shame in that. But I think if he could get Kilkenny an All-Ireland under-20 winner first since 2022, it would go a long way for him. But I would say maybe if he has a very good year this year, has a good year with Ballyhale, and if Derek Ling maybe doesn't deliver an All-Ireland next year, or at least at minimum an All-Ireland final, then who knows, maybe in 2027 we could be seeing Henry Shefflin as the new Kilkenny manager, and could be starting to potentially see a new era in Kilkenny hurling. We'll just have to wait and see.
No, we certainly will. I think when you look at it, when you were mentioned there about people underrating the job that Derek Ling has done, I mean, he has, in my opinion, the team now that he has aren't as good as that team that Brian Cody managed in the All-Ireland final against Limerick in 2022, where they scored 226 and pushed that Limerick team all the way. That being said, Brian Cody went 7 years without winning the Liam McCarthy Cup at the end of his tenure. They won it last in 2015. And you would have been a brave man to say that we would be here in 2025 heading into 26, and they still haven't won one since. And Aaron, I'll throw this one to you. It said Peter says Owen Murphy was on with Woolley yesterday. 11-year drought is haunting them now. The longer that goes on, the more it can build up on a team. I mean, you've seen it with, across the sports, that the longer away and the further away you get from success, the higher the pressure is and the higher the mountain gets to get back there. So they need success and they need it now. And I think that's why I personally think if Henry shows some promise, like if he wins the All-Ireland at under-20 this year, I think he's straight up to senior.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. I think it's a tap-in really from the Kilkenny County Board, to be honest with you. I think they're shooing it in, like bringing him in for a year or two with the under-20s. Like, I think most Kilkenny fans already want Derek Lyng out as well from the last couple of years, which I do agree with you lads as well. I do think it is actually quite harsh, to be fair, for Kilkenny fans to feel that way with Derek Lyng. But no, I agree as well. Like, and I agree with what Liam was saying. I don't think things were that bad as what we made out with Galway. Like, for the first 2 years, I thought they did very well. Like, they got to a semi-final. They were quite, like, they played well against Limerick as well. Like, in the first half of the the second semi-final that he had against Limerick, they were 6-7 points up at half-time, playing some phenomenal stuff. And Limerick obviously came out and steamrolled them in the second half. And whilst the last season went very bad, like, when you look at Micheál Donoghue, who's come in, Galway legend of a manager, like, fair enough, yeah, he got them out of Leinster, but have things really improved that much? Do you know what I mean? I don't really know if they have, to be honest with you. So, look, I think it's clever by the Kilkenny County Board. Like, bring him in for a year. If it goes badly, then okay, right, we won't appoint Henry Shefflin as manager. But if it goes well, then I think more people will get behind it. There won't be that kind of feeling in the background of when he was there with Galway. And another thing worth mentioning as well, and I know you've mentioned it as well, Seamus, he knows that Galway team inside and out now as well. Like, he knows a lot of the players, and maybe, look, some of those players will be moved on and different things like that over the next couple of seasons. But I think there is, Henry will he'll have been on the other side a little bit. So, look, there are question marks there, but Eddie Brennan's an interesting one, because, like, Eddie Brennan's obviously done a lot of work with clubs and different things like that. He was manager of Cúilín for a while. He was manager of Laois as well. But Henry Shefflin has at least managed at that level with Galway. Do you know what I mean? So it's an interesting one. I think between either or, it's an interesting show. But look, I think as well, if Derek Lyng has a great year with Kilkenny, then no one's getting it as well. So it's up in the air at the moment anyway.
Absolutely. What we'll do is, as well, we have 3 stories, and then one that I do think we're going to be on for quite a while. So what I'll do is I'll give one each to the 3 of us, and then we'll discuss the story of the GPA proposing an 80% increase in the grants, because I think we could be talking about that for a while, and then we'll run through some club championship action for the weekend ahead. So starting off, Liam, I'm going to give you this story. Declan Bonner announced officially as the Fermanagh manager. Matthew put this together for Cúilín Media and for the Gaelic Statsman page on Monday. It was rumoured, and we did discuss it briefly on the Sunday edition. We were talking about him potentially becoming Fermanagh boss, but he is officially named now. Obviously, multiple Ulster titles as a player and manager with Donegal, and now he takes the reins at Fermanagh. What do you make of this appointment? What do you expect?
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting appointment, obviously taking over from Kieran Donnelly. He's going into a big job, it has to be said. And I mean that by the perspective of Fermanagh over the last couple of years have been a team that have probably been a small bit disappointing. I think it'd be kind of fair to say. Like, they've been a team who over the last couple of years, especially in the Tailteann Cup, have not really lived up to some bit of expectation. I felt like they gave it a bit more of a go this year, but they still just felt like a team that had another year to go up, but just could never, ever do it. And even this year, you could see it in Division 3 as well. Like, they had some good wins in that division and put in some good performances here and there. But they were always just a team that you could just never rely on to get a win. Was it the down game that I remember this year that they really, really should have got over the line in, and they completely capitulated in? It just games like that, losing to Carlow in the Tailteann Cup as well. Just games that were so sloppy. So I think bringing in a man like Bonner, who is, he's a shrewd operator. He takes no BS. He's an experienced winner as well. He's an experienced manager, experienced coach. Like, he's been in management for a long time as well. Like, he is, what's he, 60, 61 years of age, 62 years of age. He's been coaching for well over 2 decades now. I think he's probably the right person at the right time for Fermanagh. Like, I feel like they have the players, and I feel like they have the talent of a team that could well compete with teams in Division 3, or a team that could probably look to get promotion from Division 3 next year, and push on from getting to the Tailteann Cup semi-final this year, which I will say that semi-final was one of the worst games I'd ever had the displeasure of seeing in my life against Kildare. I was watching it briefly before I went into Zach Bryan, and my God, it was absolutely awful. But yeah, I think if Fermanagh could just get a bit of belief from Bonner, like he is a former Ulster winner, he's an All-Ireland winner. If they could just get a bit of belief from him into their setup, then Fermanagh could be an underdog for the 2026 season. They could be a team that could be looking to maybe be one of the teams that goes up from Division 3 instead of some of the ones that we're probably predicting already, like a Clare or a Westmeath or a Downs. So, yeah, no, I think it's an excellent appointment. I think it's a really, really good appointment. I think he'll work out well for them. But, yeah, look, fair play to Fermanagh. I think it's an excellent appointment, and I think he'll actually do a very, really good job with them.
I think it's a solid appointment as well. I think he'll do well there. Matthew, your story, the official Camogie All-Stars for 2025, the nominees were announced. And again, you put the post together, fair play to you, and the Player of the Year nominees were announced as well. If I could put it across to you, obviously, besides the 3 Player of the Year nominees, they're going to be in as All-Stars. Could I get 2 more that you think are shoo-ins? And then who you would lean towards for Player of the Year?
Well, Carrie Donan has to be a shoo-in, especially after all Ireland final performance, especially after that winning free to win the All-Ireland. And I suppose her pressure, her dealing with the pressure of leading that Galway team, I think Carrie Donan is certainly a shoo-in for an All-Star there. You look at others there, I think probably Dara Hayes for Cork, I think is definitely a shoo-in as well. Outstanding performances for Cork all throughout the season for her, and yeah, she was Player of the Year last year, so she's carried on that form into this season as well. And for me as well, I think Ciara Hickey from Galway is probably a shoo-in. I was really impressed with her at centre back in the All-Ireland final. I think she won about close to 10 turnovers in that final as well, and I didn't realise this. I think she's about still 21, 22 years of age. So I thought she was a lot older because, the experience that she did show in that Ireland final was absolutely outstanding. So it kind of shocked me the age of Ciara Hickey. But yeah, those will be probably my 3 shoo-ins for an All-Star other than the Players of the Year, obviously. And my Player of the Year, the thing is, it's such a difficult one to call. I think it's between 2. I think it's between Aoife Donoghue and Saoirse McCarthy. Aoife Donoghue performed well in the All-Ireland final, outstanding player, and probably got his best player this year. I will say that unbelievably, and that's probably not an unpopular opinion. But Saoirse, someone mentioned to me during the week, this is her 3rd year in a row to get nominated for Player of the Year. She didn't win it the first 2 years. And she was probably the best player for Cork on the pitch of the All-Ireland final and throughout the whole campaign as well. She got the Player of the Match award in the All-Ireland semi-final as well. And if there was one player on the Cork team that was getting them up for these sorts of games, it was Saoirse. And I just think she plays with a smile on her face. But like, even I interviewed her on Star Sport podcast and Southern Star as well. She's probably the best person that you could interview because, yes, she's a brilliant player, but you just had that feeling she loves the game. She goes out on the pitch. She play her because she enjoys it. It's not a chore to her. She just do it, and she's an absolutely incredible player in terms of that. For that reason, like, I just think to be nominated for 3 years in a row, you deserve at least one. And I think Saoirse deserves it this season because of that. Yes, I do get the arguments that the Player of the Year should go to the All-Ireland champion. And initially, I did have Aoife Donoghue with my Player of the Year. But the more I think about it, the more I'm thinking Saoirse absolutely deserves it. So, for my opinion anyway, I don't know what you think, but I think Saoirse McCarthy deserves Player of the Year this year.
Yeah, it's a very good show. And I thought in the final, her performance was absolutely outstanding. I think that if it was given to her, I don't think anybody could have any complaints. I'd be between Aoife Donoghue and Saoirse McCarthy. No disrespect intended to Dervla Higgins, but that would be who I would be leaning towards. Aaron, your story. Carl Gallagher returns from the AFL. He's back from Australia, the big Monaghan midfielder. He's returned from Adelaide Crows. His spell there is over. It's a big, big boost for Monaghan and a timely boost as well, because you look at the players that have retired recently from Monaghan, namely the big one is Darren Hughes. They need reinforcements around the middle, and that's exactly what Gallagher will bring.
You're on mute.
Oops. There we go. So there always has to be one of us that gets caught with that.
Yeah.
I guess with me this time. But yeah, what I was saying anyway was they've obviously lost a lot of players over the last couple of seasons in and around the middle with the likes of Kieran and Darren Hughes and different players like that through retirements and obviously players getting on. So it's huge, absolutely huge for Monaghan to get an extra player in there. And I don't think they were a million miles off last season. I thought they had a very good year, promoted obviously from Division 2. People forget they were 6-7 points up versus Donegal at half time, and obviously kind of fell apart in the second half. But
7.
it was Gabriel Bannigan's first season as well as Monaghan manager. And I thought he did very well. So yeah, it's a welcome addition, welcome plus for Monaghan. It still doesn't put them up there as like a serious contender or anything like that. I think you have your probably serious contenders next year of Kerry, Armagh, Donegal, maybe Tyrone as well. And then you've got a bracket of teams underneath that have question marks over them, like Dublin. I think Galway are probably in that bracket a little bit as well. And maybe Monaghan are in that bracket. Maybe Derry as well, maybe Mayo. So yeah, be interesting to see how it goes.
Absolutely. There's some big players still over there though, and like there's rumors about, could this player go? Owen McAvoy was linked with going away. There was further players linked with going away. To be honest, it is a trend that you can't ever begrudge a player for going. And if I was a player, I definitely would consider going for the lifestyle that you live out there, for the money that you get. And that's obviously where we're going to lead to next with the conversation, that you can understand why you're going. It just feels a little bit like, in terms of when the AFL come here, they take a player, the GA doesn't get anything for that player, but the GA don't own that player. So it's like the GA is vulnerable to having all the players taken away in this way. Now I think that it's not going to go overboard. I certainly don't think it will get to the level that it's got in the LGFA in the men's game, where there's 40 players over there. I don't think that's going to happen. But that being said, it is something that when the associations eventually merge into one, hopefully in 2027, hopefully sooner, but when they merge together, they will need to look at that. You can't keep being blind to it. You have to look at, why are the players going? On top of, the fact that they're getting paid and their lifestyle, but what are the main things that are driving those players to go, and what then can we add into our game to make them want to stay or come back or everything like that? Because the other thing is that I would love, in a perfect world, if the GA season, inter-county season, ran until whatever, August, and then the AFL season started in October or something, and there was no overlap between the two of them and players could do both. But that's not really happening. The LGFA one is backing up. So the season is actually starting now in the AFLW, and over the next couple of years, they're moving backwards into August and July. So they're eventually going to cross over with the All-Ireland final itself. Avian Cleary was on a plane to Australia the day after playing in the All-Ireland final with special permission from the club to be there. So, I don't know, worrying trend.
One thing I will add, unpopular opinion, I don't think that would be an idealistic scenario, Seamus, where there's no overlap. And simply because there is an argument to say, if a player like Carr, well, he probably didn't play much with the Adelaide Crows if he did get released at the end of it. But for a player that is actively over in AFL and he then comes back and plays football with amateur athletes, don't you think that's a bit dangerous if there's a serious injury? Like if a player gets knocked out. Because they would have been training, high intensity, professional level over the last few months or so. Like an example down here in Cork, you all know Mark Keane, obviously the goal against Kerry and stuff like that. He's coming back to play in the 4th-tier Cork football for his club in the next few weeks against Island. It's Mitchelstown against Island Rovers, and he's coming back to play for the Mitchelstown team. Isn't that a bit unfair for him to be drafted in for a knockout game against? They're not even inter-county. Like the Island players aren't even inter-county players. Like they're not club human beings. Like, don't you think that's a bit unfair for that to happen? Because there could be a serious injury. If that does happen, then There might be questions.
To be honest, no, I don't agree. I think it's, you look at the level that the inter-county lads train to, you look at the level of gym work that they do, the level of fitness work that they do. The GAA now is a professional sport in everything but money paid to the players. It's professional in terms of the time commitments. It's professional in terms of the gym sessions. It's professional in terms of the diet that they're on. And to be honest, most of them have jobs that completely cater to their inter-county career. There are exceptions, but most of the players are teachers that, they're working jobs that allow them to have the evenings off or the weekends off to go get these gym sessions in, go get the diet in, everything like that. And the reality is, I know firsthand playing in my club, the lads that went away and played with Dublin, when they came back, it was night and fucking day. All of a sudden, they were so much bigger, so much stronger than they were before because they were on the inter-county training plan, inter-county diet, everything like that. And to be honest, we've seen players come back from the AFL, like Pierce Hanley, for example. Connor Hanley, come back to Mayo. And he was actually very rusty because he'd been playing Australian rules football for a long time and his skills weren't at it. Mark Keane, I know he made a big impact off the bench, but Cork elected not to start him in that year where it wasn't a fabulous Cork team, yet they didn't start him. And I think actually you look at Ballymun Kickham's, when Ballymun Kickham's were playing the league and then for the championship, they get James McCarthy back, John Small back, these lads back. I actually think that's more of a shot in the arm than getting an AFL player back. I think if you ask any club around the country, would you rather get an inter-county footballer back for Champo, or would you rather get an AFL player back for Champo? I think the majority of GAA clubs will go with an inter-county player. So I do get it. There's no question AFL is more physical. It's harder hitting. It's tougher because, you can rugby tackle someone. But the reality, I think, as well is I think it's more of an advantage having inter-county players come back.
Yeah, I think it depends on the player as well.
Depends on the player.
Depends on their preference as well.
Yeah, I would agree as well, like with that point that like it is a professional sport at this point, basically without paying the players, like, and the training. Like I've seen it myself, being even with just the under-20s with Offaly this year. Like the training that they're doing, the county players are doing nowadays is actually frightening, to be honest with you. And the size of these guys and the fitness of these guys, like it's actually off the charts. The commitment that they give, what they're benching and what their body fat is and everything like that. It's all down to a T. Their diet is like it's everything to them. But
that's just add on a point. There's a reason that the GAA players go to Australia and take to it like a duck to water, because they're already living that lifestyle of training, eating, sleeping like a pro.
But even seeing, I know it's completely kind of different issue and it probably doesn't make much sense to it, but even seeing, remember when they did the toughest trade? Yeah. Like seeing like Aidan O'Shea was being told by those NFL guys at the combine that like if he had just grown up playing a bit more NFL, he'd slot right in. He had all the material to be an NFL player. You saw Brendan Maher going over trying cricket. If he had a bit more, if he grew up playing cricket, or spent just even a summer playing cricket, there'd have been no question about it. He'd have been a fantastic cricket player. Lee Chin with hockey, well able for the hits, just obviously doesn't have the ice skating skills or anything like that all the professionals would have. Like these lads would take to many other sports. Who was it from Crossmaglen Rangers went over and played soccer for Sunderland? Swapped with David Bendy. I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment. But like went over, and again, if he'd have just grown up playing a bit more soccer, then again he'd have been excellent. So a lot of these intercounty players now, or a lot of even your average club GA player now, could go into other sports, like you mentioned there, like a duck to water. But it's an interesting enough argument though.
No, it certainly is. And look, it's one again where there is no right answer or wrong answer. That situation is entirely just based off opinions. But this one is very opinionated. And I've seen it drew up an article for Sports Joe this morning. And there is a lot of people getting their opinions in on this. So the GPA are set to, well, demand is maybe a little, I'm just going to change this word, set, because I said demand, and demand is a little bit strong. But the GPA is set to request an 80% increase on player covering. So that's by government grant. So there's no question about it. I'm going to get the exact figures. So an independent report showed that GAA players generate €591 million for the Irish economy every year. The GPA will on Thursday call for a major boost to inter-county player grants, seeking an increase from €1,400 to €2,500 per player. If approved, the annual cost of the scheme would climb from about €5.6 million to roughly €10 million, covering around 4,000 male and female athletes respectively. Lads, this one has split opinions, and it will continue to split opinions because at our core, we love the fact that it's an amateur game. And I am definitely protective of that. I'm proud of that. It just feels like as I said there, it's pro now and everything but pay. And when you're bringing in then, when the GA were talking about manager pay, the next question is player pay. Once you're bringing in that managers are getting paid, and if people start seeing the figures that managers might be making, say if a manager is making 100 grand a year, 150 grand a year, Aaron, I'll go to you first with this one. Just your take on that initially, how your feelings are and what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly for it, to be honest. I mostly agree with it. Mainly because of the fact that, like, especially with the cost of living and expenses and everything else, like there is so much that players have to pay for now. You know, and there is so much, like, especially when you're seeing lads like commuting all the time as well. Like you've so I think people forget how many county players live in Dublin and then have to commute to counties like Offaly or Laois and Westmeath for training, Cavan even as well. You know, like a lot of players have to do it, and there's so much expenses they get racked up across the board. Like obviously there's been a huge demand, like growth in the sport as well. So like there's more to cater for. Like especially with the growth of sports science and strength and conditioning and everything else, there's more coaches now to bring in. I think it's one of them things where it has to be used the right way. I think that's the worry. Like that is the concern, is that you get this grant and then it just doesn't get used the right way. I think people are probably a little bit worried that they see the GAA maybe, oh, happy days, like the GAA are getting all this money, but you know they already get loads of money. They like they already earn loads of money. So like, why are they now asking for more? Like it's a a multi-million organization that doesn't necessarily probably need this grant. They could probably pay for a lot of this themselves. But look, I think the main point is if it gets the players what they need, whatever way it's come from, if it's a grant or if it's from the GA themselves, then you know I'd agree with it there. And I do think, yeah, like it's like it probably is getting that way where it might become a paid sport eventually. You know, like it does feel like it's getting that way. You have underhand payments from managers. There's been lots of things before with clubs as well and players there and different things like that, stories, rumors that have gone on behind the scenes. So I think it's one of them where it has to be used right. But yeah, like especially when you're looking at players losing out on $3.5 grand in potential overtime, like I mean that's crazy amount of money. Like, and I think as well, like you do forget all these lads do have full-time jobs as well. And then you're being asked to train 2-3 times a week. And I just think, yeah, it would keep players, you know, we want to keep the best players in the game as well. We don't want to be losing them. We were speaking about losing them to the AFL and other organizations. We want to try and keep our players. Or we want to try and keep the sport as competitive as possible. We don't want players opting out and things like that. So, yeah, look, in terms of how it's going to work, I don't really know. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I think my initial take would be for it. Yeah,
it's very, very interesting because I do agree with Jan. I think it's a slippery slope in terms of like, but it feels like there's a wave behind this because of how professional the game is getting. When you look at the management teams, like it's crazy. Like just being at a big day in Croke Park or being there and you're working media or something. I know all four of us have been at big GA events and you're working and you're interviewing people after the game and you just remember to yourself, like everyone that you look at in that stadium, every single person that you look at staff wise is getting paid except the players. Like the people who are working in the canteen, the people who are working behind the shops, in the bars, like they're all getting paid. Every single member of that background team, especially at the inter-county, like the top inter-county level, they're all getting paid. Maybe the volunteer, maybe a kitman's a volunteer, maybe here or there, but like the physios are all getting paid handsomely. The only ones not getting paid are the players. And that's always been something that we've guarded. It's always been something that we've protected. But when managers start getting paid, Matthew, is that almost like a dangerous match that, like, once that's lit, it's like, okay, gloves are off now type thing?
It's a very good point you mentioned there about like journalists are getting paid and the staff around Croke Park are getting paid, stewards, everyone's getting paid except the players. And yeah, that does really hit home. And the figures that GP are putting out, like losing that amount of money, it's absolutely mind-boggling in a way. You're kind of on the fence with all this. Yes, the players deserve to get paid for what they offer to fans of the sport and things like that. But I go back to, well, this was 8 years ago now. I don't know, do you remember Johnny Cooper talking to Jeff Stilling and Chris Kamara on that AIB documentary thing about their journey to Croker? And I think it was Jeff asked Johnny Cooper a question: would you want to get paid like it's soccer? And Johnny Cooper, this is from a 6 in a row winning All-Ireland champion, by the way. He said that it would ruin the sport, basically. Now, I don't think we go down the rabbit hole of soccer straight away, because you've seen how the players behaved in the transfer window, in particular in soccer. It was a disgrace. But if it goes to the level of, let's say, not a sport like soccer, but like rugby, I think that would be fair enough. I think, look, the Six Nations players are getting paid. It's a brilliant competition and all that. If GA players are getting the same amount as the rugby players there at that level, I think that's fair enough. That is fair enough. Rugby is, but the thing is, like, you look at rugby now, that's a sport where the game does need money. I heard Bernard Chapman talk about that a few years ago. Like, players are getting less paid or whatever. TV deals are all free to air, and rugby players aren't. And rugby's kind of dying as a sport because the money's going down. So there's kind of that element as well. It's a difficult one. It really is a difficult one. I think if the GA players are going to get paid, you kind of have to balance the books as well. And you can't have it every which way you want. For example, fans have to accept that GA Plus is a thing now. You have to have games behind the paywall now, because that's how you get money, and that's how you get revenue to get the games going in GA circles. You don't want a situation completely like rugby where basically losing money. So like, I think they need to be strategic about this. They need to kind of level the balance books and things like that, level the balance sheets and things like that, and don't make it like a soccer situation where the players are behaving irrationally and things. I don't think we'll get to that situation. Hopefully it doesn't in the next 10, 15 years or whatever. But when you put out those figures, Seamus, it does hit home, and it just tells you that, you need to get paid for these sorts of commitments. Like you look at, for instance, the Donegal senior footballers this year. They played 11 games in the championship. How much is that garnering in terms of fuel, in terms of time, in terms of effort, in terms of meals, in terms of match prep? How much money is that going to entail over 11 games? So I think, look, it needs to happen, certainly. But then again, as I said before, look, the GA fans and GA personnel, I think they need to be kind of strategic about this and plan it in a certain way. You can't just pay the players willy-nilly straight away without any thought to it. There needs to be a plan there. So I think that needs to happen in the next few years if the GPA are going to keep to that stance.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Like, there is no way in hell that the GA can just click their fingers and go, okay, it's pro. Like, this needs to be regulated to fuck. Like, this needs to be like, because then on top of that, it needs to be very clear. Okay, at what level are you entitled to money? Do you have to be an inter-county player to get money? If there is a rich club, are they allowed to pay their players? Are Kilmacud Crokes allowed to pay to bring in somebody because they are, much more wealthy than some other clubs around the country? Are they allowed to offer money to players to come and play for them? like Parnell's, what they did, everybody knows the Parnell's paid money. Maybe not literally handed over money, but they paid for accommodation, they paid for petrol, they paid for cars, everything like that, so players would join their club. And the reality is that does then that become okay? And could we see more situations like what happened to Parnell's inevitably, where, you know, the bottom fell out of the whole project and they ended up going into administration and having to dissolve the club and come back as Pobble Parnell? We have to take that as a cautionary tale. In my opinion, Liam, it would be a case of, similar to what Matthew said, you couldn't pay the club players, because then it would become just absolute chaos. And like, you'd have all sorts of people, you know, getting money, and like, because then, you know, how many lads, like, let's be honest, like, how many lads do you know that turn up and play for Championship and don't play any of the league? Like, things like that would come into play. And then the politics of it, my goodness, would get through the roof. The next question is, I think it has to be inter-county players that would be the ones getting it. But then, is it a rollover contract? Do you get paid for the year? You know, does the GA manager announce in January, these are the 30 lads that I'm going with, and then that's it for the year? They're not allowed to call anybody else in? Or how? But one thing's for sure, there needs to be clear and concise, like, regulations involved here. And the thing is that deep down, I don't really want it to happen. I'm the same as Matthew. Like, I absolutely adored that clip at the end where Johnny Cooper was like, no, ruin it. And you saw how blown away Jeff and Cammy were by the attitude of the players. But it almost feels a little bit inevitable.
It kind of felt inevitable for the last couple of years. And it's probably maybe one thing that it's the one thing that you wouldn't want it to go down the soccer route as well. Who do you give the most amount of money to? Like, who do you value as, because essentially, like you see it in, well, you see it in soccer. Say you're at Liverpool, you know, Mohamed Salah or maybe now Alexander Isak are going to get the most amount of money for their club. When Lionel Messi was at Barcelona, he was obviously going to get the most amount of money for his club. Ronaldo would get the most amount at Real Madrid. And the same in rugby, like Johnny Sexton would be the highest paid Irish rugby player, or maybe at a time it was Brian O'Driscoll, you know, or obviously Dan Carter would have been for the All Blacks. But like, and as much as you could look at, say, a Dublin and say, right, Conor Callaghan is getting the most amount of money, or David Clifford's getting the most amount of money for Kerry, or if you were to go to Cork, and if you went to Cork, do you turn around and say, right, well, Patrick Horgan gets the most amount of money because he's been there the longest and he'd be regarded as one of the best players of all time? Do you give it to Robert Downey because he was the captain this year? Same with Tipperary. Do you give it to Noel McGrath, long-serving player? Do you give it to Darren McCarthy, young player, you know, potential player of the year, hurler of the year? There's a lot of balancing with that as well. And like you mentioned, the politics with that, and especially around clubs as well, because clubs would probably feel like, hold on, why is our player getting less than our rivals' club members, you know, who we value more than what we'd value the other club players? So, but I do agree to an extent as well, like with what Aaron said there, we are at the end of the day in a cost of living crisis, and probably one that we haven't seen really ever, you know, with the extortionate amount of with the extortionate prices for houses, for food, for fuel. Like, I mean, I was at nearly every Offaly game this year, and I was involved at the 20s as well. And like, you only realize the amount of fuel that has to go into everything, and the amount of, like, the meals that they get after trainings, the meals they get after food, after games. Like, it's actually, if you actually added up all the money throughout the year that you've probably spent going to matches and getting food, and especially, like, say, for me and my father, who would have gone to a lot of the Offaly games this year, like, we went down to Cork for the league final. We went to Parnell Park for the first game in the championship. I went down to Kilkenny. I went down to Wexford. We went to Crow Park for the game against Dublin. You know, would have gone to the Waterford game in the league, only we were at an Offaly minor match that day. You know, like, there's so much fuel that goes into it, so much money that goes into that. And then it was even funny last year when I was in Sweden and I was showing people clips of hurling and clips of Gaelic football. And the moment they turned around, they heard me telling them that the players don't get paid anything, they were astonished, because they were amazed by the skill of these players and the fitness level and everything they put into it. And then to turn around to them and say, yeah, these guys who are playing in front of 50,000 fans in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, or 82,000 in Crow Park, or even I don't know, 20,000 in Portlaoise or whatever, are not getting a single cent, and they have to get up the next morning and go teach third class, or they have to go work their shift at Portlaoise Garda Station, or they have to go work as a sales reps for Hyundai or something like that. They were absolutely astounded. So, but I do agree kind of with Matthew. If you developed a type of rugby style, but you balance the books over the next couple of years, like you said there, as well as clubs, not only club players, you wouldn't play the league. A lot of them don't even train. You know, and that's down for a lot of reasons. That's down to work. That's down to travel. You know, obviously they'll know a couple of months out what their schedule is in terms of what club matches they will have throughout the year, when the intercounty team would probably realistically be out, so they can plan around that. But yeah, I feel like if you started giving every single player money, it would probably create a lot of issues, and it would probably be forcing a lot of players as well, who a lot of the time can't make trainings, can't make matches for obvious reasons, you know, because at the end of the day we're amateur players. It could just get extortion. Excuse me, it could get extortionate out of nowhere, and clubs or counties could just excuse me, go bankrupt out of nowhere. I'm choking here even thinking about it. But yeah, no, it's an interesting call. I feel like it's been inevitable for a while. But yeah, I'm kind of the same as he. That clip of Johnny Cooper when he said it to them in 2017 after winning an All-Ireland final, you know, after playing the battle that they did against Mayo, and then to tell them, no, like, we don't want to get paid. It would ruin the sport. It is something to be proud. And as well, you wouldn't want players in a way to be getting big money and then to develop egos in a way. Do you know, like, I don't think they would anyway, but like you see David Clifford taking photos with kids after every single game, or in our case, Adam Screeney or Conor Callahan would whenever he plays for Cúilín or plays for Dublin, especially if he's playing outside Croke Park. Like, for them to then maybe start getting a lot of money into their bank account, could that kind of diminish it in a way? Could they be seen as more celebrities in a way, which I wouldn't want, to be honest with you?
I think it's really interesting. I think my main grudge with the status quo, I adore the system the way that the way that it has been, I would say. I think right up until, because what happened was that over the last 10 years, what we've seen an explosion of the amount of money in the game. Sky Sports came in, started paying for the games. GA Go followed on. All of a sudden, there's a lot more commercial money, marketing money getting thrown around. There's a lot more people trying to come in and get a slice of the pie. Like, once that starts happening, and, you know, you go to the media center now and, you know, it's packed with, you know, media outlets that 10 years ago, 15 years ago either didn't exist or weren't covering the GAA. You then, you know, all the podcasts that have popped up, we're not behind the paywall, but how many ones are? Like, how many GAA podcasts have gone behind the paywall? All of a sudden, there's a lot of money flowing around the GAA. And bit by bit, I think the players, there's no doubt, in my opinion, if I was a player, and let's say that, you know, I had a particularly rough few weeks training, or, you know, a really bad match, and I was getting stick off the fans or something like that, the way that some players unfortunately do, I wouldn't be surprised if some of them think, you know, I'm making all this money for, you know, all these people, and I'm still, you know, having to get up and go to work in the morning because I don't want to, like, you know, this feels like a full-time job. And especially, this is what really pisses me off with the way that it is right now, is you see like a legend like Lauren McGee, who is literally Dublin icon, won how many All-Irelands and been a key part of them. She does her cruciate and she has to dip into her own pocket to pay for the surgery. That's bullshit. Like, that's the first thing that needs to change. Any player who gets injured playing inter-county should never have to dip in to their own pocket to pay for the surgery. That should be covered right from the bat. Like, there should be no questions asked there. Did you get injured playing for your county? Yes, you did. Okay, well, the GA are going to cover that. That's the way that I think it should be. I think that should be kind of the first thing taken care of. Like, she admitted there about like how Mick Bohan chipped in to pay for her surgery, or pay for a good chunk of the surgery. That isn't good enough, in my opinion. That isn't good enough. But the reality is that what you said is, and look, Peter nearly beat me to the punch there. Like, the reality is right now it's unofficial, as you were saying, Liam. There's payments that are hush and everything like that, and it kind of would be better if they just came to light. But if it came to light how much managers would be getting paid, I think a lot of players would have a right to ask questions. Like, would have a right to be like, hang on, what's going on here? I think at the very least, what this should do, and I fully agree with this, Aaron, just like you said, I fully agree with what the GPA are putting forward. No player should be out of pocket to play inter-county. No player should be out of pocket to play inter-county because of what they give the country, because of what they give us fans. And they give us, let's be honest, they've given all of us a career. We get to talk about these games and everything like that. If they weren't playing, there'd be no games. I'm not as interested in the other sports to make a podcast about them. So, yeah, I'm super grateful to them, and no player should be out of pocket. Now, we're into an hour. We're only a half hour away from getting delusional as fuck, so we're going to move on into the club previews. Aaron, I'm going to come to you first. Club Championship preview time. All four of us are going to highlight games that in particular we are looking forward to that are taking place across this weekend or in the middle of next week. Aaron, I'm going to throw this one to you, and just a little heads up, I will be clipping you up here for real, so make sure your answers are spick and span here.
Get me on full screen there.
Make sure the answers are spick and span. But the one that I want you to give a quick preview for, I'd like you to quickly preview and predict who you think is going to win each of the 4 Dublin Senior Football Championship quarterfinals. So we've got 4 quarterfinals taking place this weekend in the go-ahead Dublin Senior Football Championship. Aaron, as a dub, I'd like you to predict them, who you think is going to get into the semi-finals. So we have Kilmacud Crokes against Lucan Sarsfields. We have Cúilín against Clontarf. We have Ballybowden St. Enda's against Castleknock. And we have Ballymun Kickham's against Na Fianna. So starting off, Crokes, Lucan.
Yeah, I'd go with Kilmacud Crokes to come through that. I think they've far too much firepower. I think we all know the firepower that we have. What I would say, though, is that Lucan Sarsfields are a very well-run club in Dublin. Hurling-wise, they're very strong. Football-wise, they've come on as well. And whilst they don't have a huge amount of county stars within their team, they don't have too many notable players who are going to jump out. They are one of them teams that can cause a couple of problems. And like, you remember Crokes down the years have had a few scares. You remember that Raheny one a couple of years ago that went to penalties. Obviously, they lost last year to Cúilín. So don't be surprised if this is a bit closer than people think. I remember when Crokes played Thomas Davis a couple of years ago as well. Thomas Davis gave them a good rattle as well. So don't be surprised if this is closer than what people think. But I would expect Crokes to still come through by 4 points.
Very good. Next game is, of course, Cúilín against Clontarf. Cúilín v Clontarf. Who are you thinking?
I think this one will be a little bit more comfortable. I think Cúilín will win this fairly handily, to be honest. I think it'd be 7 or 8 points. I think it'd be fairly comfortable.
Very good. And then the next one, Ballybowden St. Enda's versus Castleknock.
Well, look, I have a Ballybowden St. Enda's jersey on the back there, so we better back them. Although I do think Castleknock, to be fair, we know obviously with big players like here on Kilkenny and whatnot, they're a team that in these type of games can pull off a shock and a surprise, and Ballybowden can be quite hit and miss. But as you said, some of the new players that have come into Ballybowden have been very impressive, the likes of Dara Sweeney and a few others. So I think Ballybowden will have enough. I go with a 5-point win. Yeah,
no, I was just getting distracted there. Liam, your hand looks fucking massive when you put it up close to the camera there.
Rocky Balboa over there.
I wish I had his money.
I was just looking there. I was like, Jesus. Oh, he's got it right up against the camera. Anyway, the last one, Aaron, probably the most difficult one to call. Ballymun Kickham's versus Na Fianna.
Yeah, I think I agree with your point earlier talking about Na Fianna being very hit and miss. They have been very hit and miss at times this year. Ballymun have big game players who can step up and do it in the big moments. As we know with Dean Rock in terms of 2-pointers. Na Fianna have had big injuries at different stages this year as well. They've been missing some key players. So I think Ballymun will do it. I think it's one of them where if Na Fianna get a jump on Ballymun early, I could see Na Fianna holding on and winning the game. But I think if this is a tight game going down the home stretch, I fancy Ballymun to have enough. Especially with Paddy Small in the ranks as well, Dean Rock, as we've mentioned, a few other lads in there as well, Evan Comerford between the sticks. So no, I think Ballymun will do enough. I don't think either of these two will win the Dublin Championship, but I do think Ballymun will have enough, and I'd go with the narrowest 1-point win and maybe even extra time as well.
Yeah, I think that one is going to go right down to the wire as well. Interestingly, if you are correct in all 4 of your predictions, we would be left with the last 4 clubs to win the Dublin Championship in Ballybowden, Ballymun, Kilmacud Crokes and Cúilín. So they have been the 4 powerhouses, although it is worth mentioning Na Fianna were in the final against Kilmacud, lost by a point. So they have been razor close in terms of getting there as well. But that's definitely the one that myself and Aaron are looking forward to the most. Matthew, if you could highlight any particular club action this weekend, what are you looking forward to, man?
There's mostly hurling on, but in terms of football, there's probably one championship that really catches my eye. Obviously, other than the Dublin Championship, it is the Mayo Championship quarterfinals. So Crossmaglen and Deal Rovers, who we talked about a few weeks ago, they're playing Belmullet. That'll be a difficult enough game for Crossmaglen. They do have good players like Kobe McDonald and Jason or Jordan Flynn, for example, and all them they've done absolutely brilliantly over the last few years, and momentum is a big thing for them. Belmullet, though, Ryan O'Donoghue's in that team, and Ryan O'Donoghue is one of Mayo's main forwards, so it's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out there. Knockmore playing Ballintubber as well. Knockmore, probably one of the best Mayo clubs over the last few years. They do have Ray Dempsey, I think, back in charge, and Joe Brody, certain Joe Brody in the backroom team there. So I'd be hoping Knockmore will lose this weekend. They're in Ballintubber with Killian O'Connor on that team, Dermot O'Connor and all them. So look, that'll be a difficult enough game, and it'll be interesting to see how Mr. Brolly will fare in a quarterfinal in Mayo there. Ballahutterine are facing Ballinasstephenite, and Ballinasstephenite finished second in their group as far as I know in Mayo, so they were the champions last year. They lost to Coolair Strandhill in the Connacht Championship, so is that squad going downhill? So that'll be very interesting to see. Ballahutterine are a good enough team, obviously, with Cuba Callahan, who's one of the main scorers in the Mayo Championship, not probably one of the main good players in Mayo in terms of inter-county standard, but he's very good at club level. And then you have Brayfield against Westport, which is a very interesting game. Obviously, you have Brayfield with the O'Shea's and some good players there. Westport, you still have Lee Keegan kicking about. So it is a very interesting weekend in the Mayo quarterfinals there. But as I said, in hurling, there is a lot of big games in the hurling game this weekend. The Clare Hurling Championship is the semi-finals this weekend. And we talked about the Clare Championship a few weeks ago, that it's so wide open when you look at it. Kilmaley are playing Narrow Guinness in one semi-final. Very interesting. Kilmaley, from what I'm seeing anywhere, the surprise packets in the Clare Championship at the moment. Narrow Guinness seem to be the main side on form, with the likes of David Reedy and Shane O'Donnell and all them in the Narrow Guinness team. You did have Cloney Quinn coming up against Ballier. So you have Ballier with the brilliant Tony Kelly, and Cloney Quinn have Ryan Taylor, who's probably Clare's best performer this season in a poor enough campaign, and Peter Duggan there on that Cloney Quinn team as well. So we could have an interesting, but if Cloney Quinn and Kilmaley reach the final in that competition in the Clare Championship, that'll be some final in terms of uniqueness in many ways. In my own county in the Cork Championship, you have quarterfinals this weekend. Middleton are facing Glen Rovers. Obviously, I can't talk too much because the next game, SARS are playing Charleville. Hopefully, we'll get over the line in that game. And St. Finbarrs are facing Emo Kelly. That's a difficult game to call it there. But probably the most important game of the weekend in the Cork Championship is the relegation playoff between Erin's Own and Newtown Chandram. So Newtown Chandram were the All-Ireland champions in 2004. They won the Munster Championship in 2009. They had the likes of Ben O'Connor, Jory O'Connor, all in their ranks, and they have Tim O'Mahony right now. Erin's Own have been over 30 years, close to 40 years in the Premier Senior Championship. So one of the traditional clubs is going to go in the Cork Premier Senior Hurling Championship, which should be very interesting to see in terms of that. In the Limerick Championship, I think it's the quarterfinals this weekend. Yes, the quarterfinals there. So Ballybrown are facing Adair, Kilmallock are facing Monaghan. And I think that's it. Yeah, but call Aidan O'Connor is on form there for Ballybrown, and there have some good players in there as well. Kilmallock did lose heavily last weekend to Ballybrown, so how will they react in this quarterfinal to Monaghan, who were the intermediate All-Ireland a few seasons back? You had the temporary preliminary quarterfinal as well. Jacob Brackett against Tumavara. Talked about Tumavara a few weeks ago. Dar McCarthy, what a player he is. Glenouty Rossmore playing Drummond Inch. You have Kildangan against Kilron McDonough's in that preliminary quarterfinal as well. So a lot of interesting games in the championships there. But I think the Clare Hurling Championship, considering it's so wide open, it's going to be very interesting to see the semi-finals in that competition this weekend.
Oh, certainly. There's a few there that are sent up to be crackers. I think Ballybrown are kind of going under the radar, and Limerick, there's some really, really good players. Conor Coughlin's with them as well, isn't he? I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, no, he always stood out to me. I remember looking at him and being like, if you played in any other team in any other era, you would be starting every single game. But he was in that Limerick half-back line with Diarmaid Byrnes, Declan Hannon and Kyle Hayes. So, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to get game time there. Liam, any game in particular are you looking forward to?
Well, to even stick with the Cork Championship, I think Middleton and Glen Rovers it has the makings of a very, very interesting contest. Obviously, Middleton beaten in the last 2 seasons by Sarsfield's winners in 2021. A team with some very, very good talent in there. Breon Saunderson, Conor Lehane, Tommy O'Connell, etc. Going up against Glen Rovers, who have the likes of Patrick Horgan, the 2 Downies, Micheál Mullins, who I think is an exceptional player. I really, really like the look of him. I was kind of surprised he maybe didn't get more minutes with Cork this year, but maybe he will over the next couple of years. Or I hope he does, because I think he's an exceptional talent. But yeah, it's probably one of the most difficult games to probably predict over the weekend. Chatting to a friend of mine who's from Middleton, he's probably been less optimistic this year about them than previous years. I don't know whether that's down to just not being able to get over the line over the last couple of years or not, but they've been it'd probably be fair to say they've probably been a bit hit and miss this year. They did top their group, but they've probably not been as smooth as maybe they'd have liked. They're probably in a way still relying a bit too much on Conor Lehane to a degree. He's still getting a large majority of their scores in most games, but I think it has the makings of a very, very good game. I think these are 2 teams that I think would make a worthy Cork final, to be honest with you, if these 2 were to meet each other. Or maybe I'm being, I don't know, Matthew might not agree with that, but yeah, I think it's 2 really, really good sides. I think whoever goes out is a major statement. I think whoever goes through again has made a major, major statement. And yeah, I think it'll make for very, very interesting semi-finals coming up there. Boyle and Pádraig Pearses in the Roscommon Football Championship. I think more just for the sake that I hope Pádraig Pearses go through. I hope they don't go out at this stage. And my prediction goes to shit. But no, I think I'm praying to God that they go through. Although when you do look at the players that Boyle do have, obviously the Smiths, they've had Luke McGrath over the years, Mark O'Connor, so that'll be a very, very interesting contest. And then, yeah, the big game I'm looking at this week, I think Kildangan, Kilrowan, McDonald's might be an interesting enough game as well, considering Kildangan have been one of the top teams in Tip over the last 10 years, but just haven't been hitting the highs this year really at all, to be honest. They got big beaten against Toomey Vara in Group 1, in their group game, lost out to Holy Cross, Ballycahill as well. So, but it might still be an interesting enough battle there. And of course, the game I'm looking at this weekend, which could determine my happiness for the next year, is Kilcormac Cloughey and Baldamere in the Offaly Senior Championship Quarter Final. If we lose that, I'm handing in my resignation to Cúilín Media. You'll never ever see me again. But yeah, look, it's an interesting contest. It was obviously last year's Offaly hurling final. A lot of people in the county might have seen this as the final again this year, but neither of us have probably been hitting the levels that we would have liked. I think we've not been at our best, but we've still been that team who, even when we weren't at our best in our draws against Belmont and Shinrone, we still could easily have won those games as well. So I think it kind of shows maybe that we are a team that even when a team plays really, really well against us, they still can't beat us. But obviously that could all change this weekend. With Baldamere, I think it's been a very, very disappointing season from their perspective. They lost on the first day against Kildare, and it really, I think it kind of hit them in a way that they maybe didn't expect. Got lucky against Tullamore, weren't the best against Sir Kieran, and then they lost to Burr in the last round, which ironically Tullamore were playing Kildare. I was at that match, and Kildare won by a point, but had Tullamore gotten a goal in the last minute, Baldamere would have been out of the championship, and there would have been major repercussions for the club if that had happened. But yeah, look, it's going to be a very, very interesting game. There won't be much love between the two sides. It'll be very, very hard hitting. KK Baldamere on Club. Yeah, it's on Clubber this weekend. It's on 5:00 on Saturday evening. And I will be going to church Saturday morning praying to God that we go through the championship. Like, you think I'm joking? I'm not.
No, I'm rooting for you as well. I picked Kilcormac to win Leinster. I don't give a fuck about you, but I just don't want to be.
Cheers.
No, seriously, I do hope he's pulled through.
It's hilarious. Like, a lot of teams probably wouldn't want either one of us to win the championship. We're probably two of the most hated clubs in Offaly at the moment, but But look, it is what it is. Look, if we get through, I hope to God we do get through this weekend. And I still think we will, because I still think we have a better squad than Ballinamere. But it's the only thing kind of about the two of us this year that a lot of people in around Offaly have been saying as well. If we can't get up for this game, we don't deserve to win the championship. If Ballinamere can't get up for this game, they don't deserve to win the championship. So, but the only thing is, it won't be simple for either one of us going through, because if either one of us goes through, we'll have a semi-final meeting with one of Bor, who have already beaten Ballinamere this year, or Belmont, who have drawn with Cormaclye, tops their group, beat Shinrone, and have had a major turnaround this year, have the likes of David Nally, Oisin Kelly, who hurled with Offaly and been exceptional players for Offaly over the last couple of years, especially Oisin Kelly this year in particular. So, no, I think, look, it's a big game on Saturday. Hopefully we do get through it. But, yeah, no, I'm I don't know. I can't imagine. I just can't picture it if we lose, then, oh my God, you might never see me again.
Well, time will tell. Time will tell. And that brings to an end another episode here on Cúilín Media. So that's our 5th episode in the books. We've discussed, obviously, the new managerial appointments, the GPA potentially getting an 80% increase in government grants to cover the player expenses. And then on top of that, we've previewed club championship action and talked about Carl Gallagher returning from Australia as well. It's been a good episode. Thank you very much to Peter Griffin. He says here as well, great show, lads. Thanks a million. See ye Sunday. It will be Aaron and Liam on Sunday. So a bit of a switch with myself and Matthew are taking this one out. But big thank you to Peter. Big thank you to Dublin is Great. Big thank you to Smart Parents 812, NIRB as well. Thank you so much to the four of you for jumping in, getting involved in the discussion, making the episode a hell of a lot more enjoyable. We will see you on Sunday, 8 p.m. live. Chat to you all then.
Follow your instinct, baby. Follow your instinct.